I might just make that the cover art for this episode just to mess with people. Be like, what does this mean? It means nothing.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Today's guest is Alan from The Wheel Reads. As we established before we turn on recording, we're both from Hampton Roads area.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the podcast.
I really selfishly started a podcast back over a year ago. So I guess it was January of 2020 before the world ended. And so backtrack, I guess. So my story goes, I read the series 10, 11 years ago and hadn't really picked up the books again in several years. And then I heard that Amazon was making a TV show. So I decided to start rereading the books. And I got about to The Shadow Rising and realized that the same thing happened 11 years ago, is that none of my friends read this stuff. And I had no one to talk to about it. So I started I was like, well, maybe I'll just go look up, other Wheel of Time podcasts. And back then there was a few. Now there's a million of them. But there were a few of them. I think you guys were around. White Tower was around.
Possibly Black Tower back then.
Black Tower had not started yet.
Okay.
But this is before January 2020. So this is when I was doing my first. So this would have been April of 2019 or maybe even March. So I started listening to them, and I was like, wow, I've never really listened. It was my first time ever listening to podcasts. So I was like, well, this is kind of cool. Maybe I can get some friends to do one with me. And so I reached out to my friends and I was like, hey, I got this idea to do a podcast. You guys have never read this before. So we're going to read through the podcast, and similar to how the White Tower was doing it, that's where I got the inspiration from. But of course, both of them were veteran readers, even though they tried to stay non-spoilery, and they did a good job for the most part. I wanted that authentic,
first time
reaction. Yeah.
So I thought this idea up, and I started actually in March of 2019. I think it was in April of 2019 is when I created the Twitter account, and that was before I even found. So I had the idea, and it took all the way to January to find co-hosts, and I went through a long list of people and kind of figured out who do I really want to do this podcast with, who are the best personalities, who are close friends. And after many thoughts and many, many months of planning, I finally just bit the bullet and said, let's go start this thing with no equipment, nothing, and figured that no one actually listened to us. It was just kind of more for fun than anything else. And even my co-hosts, they've told me before, yeah, we didn't think this was going to go anywhere. We were hoping it would last a month, and then we'd stop doing it and they could just read through the books on their own speed. But, but here we are almost a year and a half later, and nope, you're still stuck at at reading at a super snail pace. So
that's torture.
Yeah.
That's torture.
Well, they've gotten used to it at this point. They said it was at first, but you talk to them now, they're actually enjoying the pace because they've never, both of them will tell me and tell fans as well that they've never ever read a book at this speed where you're picking it apart, where you're reading only one chapter or two chapters at a time, especially a book they've never read, and then analyzing it in that, fine tooth comb. So it's been fun for them. They've learned to enjoy it.
Who did you pick to do the podcast with? Yeah.
So yeah, Chris and Ian are my two co-hosts. Ian is a lifelong friend. I say lifelong. We met in freshman year in high school. So at this point in my life, it's 25 years ago. So lifelong friend at that point. There's adults that old. So yeah, so lifelong friend. And Chris and I actually met through my wife. He was on the track team in college with my wife, who ran track. My wife was a runner. He was a thrower. So he did shot put and javelin and, all those throwing things you do for track and field. And at alumni events, we got put at the same table, and I didn't know anybody else there. I was just the plus one of my wife, and we sit down and I was like, so what are you into? Who are you? And he's like, my name's Chris. We start talking, like, what do you like? He's like, I like Game of Thrones. I watch it all the time. I was like, oh, cool. So do I. So then we start bonding over the TV show Game of Thrones. And as we talked more, I realized that he reads a lot of fantasy books. So then fast forward a few months later, I'm like, hey, have you ever read The Wheel of Time? He's like, no, never heard of it. I was like, great. You want to be on a podcast?
Yeah, because you got to finding the right person is hard. It's someone who hasn't read the books, is willing to read the books, can sit in front of a microphone and talk into a microphone and has the time and the willingness to do it with you.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of qualifications.
And personality goes into it a lot too. You want someone that and Chris, I like the combination of the two. Ian's kind of your wild card. If you want to compare it to the characters in the books, which a lot of people do, Ian is our Matt. Ian was the crazy kid all through high school, all through college. Not as much now, but we still have stories we can tell. We get the fireworks with Matt, and Ian was the type of guy that would buy fireworks and light them off inside a house. He was that crazy kid in college that everybody knew. Whereas Chris is the gentle giant. Chris is 6'6". He does strongman and Highlander competitions, lifts giant stones. And the guy is like a freaking refrigerator. But he's a gentle giant and very thoughtful like Perrin. So if you want to compare him to the Emmons Fielders, they complement each other really well, where one's kind of has the quips and the jokes all the time. That's Ian, and Chris will dive deep and really start analyzing and go deep with a lot of thought process. So it actually blends really, really well for the podcast. At least I think so.
That's awesome.
And where are you guys in the books now?
We are chapters, I think we record next week, chapters 7 and 8 of The Shadow Rising.
Nice. Nice.
Marching our way through. Yeah.
Yeah. The Shadow Rising is always, I think, a big marker event, because it's like where the series goes from Hero's Journey fantasy series to the Wheel of Time.
They were just complaining to me, actually, because we're at that beginning lull of The Shadow Rising, as I call it. So it's just Elaine and Rand giving each other googly eyes, and Ian was like, I thought you said this is like the best book in the series. And I was like, wait.
Later on in the book.
There's so much good foreshadowing there, though.
There is a ton of good foreshadowing, but like on a first read, it's like, this is kind of boring. I want action. I want something to happen. They're just sitting in the stone doing nothing.
Right, but just as soon as that bell rings when he puts the sword back in the stone, then things happen.
Yep. Then the story takes off. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And the party splits, not to come back again for however many books. And...
Yeah, exactly.
Really, right at the beginning of this book, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are trying to get back together and sometimes not failing miserably at it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Perrin and Rand come together at the end of Lord of Chaos.
Yeah, I sort of think of that Dumai's Wells is sort of the last time they're kind of all, even though the girls aren't necessarily there, but they're kind of all in the same place at the same time.
Matt's not there though.
No, but he was there recently. So it's like they're not all in the same place at the same time, but they've all just recently reconnected and gone off on their own ways. I feel like there was that sort of split up in Shadow Rising, and then sort of they come together, not necessarily all together, but they sort of reconnect in end of book 6, beginning of book 7, and then we don't see them again together until the last battle.
Yeah, they check in.
Yeah, that's where Rand sends Matt off to go be with Elaine, and that leads to everything, the Abu Dar thing, and then he sends Perrin off to deal with the Prophet, and that starts the rest of Perrin's storyline. And the girls go to the bowl to find the Bowl of the Winds, and that starts Hat, and Egwene starts her journey to Emerald Seat. And it's all those journeys take the next 5 books, and then we have the last battle. Wheels within wheels within wheels, and we're finally on that final rotation around the story. I feel like we've already gone around twice,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, speaking of wheels, we are on the Silver Circuit today.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good chapter. There's a lot of actual
chapter.
action. It's not a walk and talk. It's things happen.
Yeah.
It's like a walk and snoop.
So, and this is chapter 14, White Plumes, and our symbol's the dice, because this is a Matt chapter, and the White Plumes are Millie Skane's hat that he follows.
That lead him into many fortuitous or not fortuitous situations. There's a lot of luck involved in how this chapter goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shut up. But, I mean, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to read us in, but I didn't want to read the beginning. Because, again, the beginning is a lot of description of clothing.
I just want to yell about wool being so thin it clings. I've never experienced that in my life. That's bullshit.
That's bullshit. You're like, no.
Yeah, Jordan likes clothes, but he doesn't really pay a lot of attention to textile practical details. He's just like, embroidery, slashed skirts. It's like, you can't have, you don't wear wool in the summer. Wool is not cool and refreshing. That's not what it's for.
I always assumed it was like some special method of treat, because wool's like all they've got, so they like developed some special way to like make wool really thin and light.
I mean, I'm sure that you can make thinner wool than my, winter sweaters and stuff, but the concept of wool so thin it clings is just like, you got to be blending that with something.
When you think about a nice like wool cardigan that's like really loose knitted or something like that. I don't know.
It would just feels so gross in this climate. Like, Anyway, that's all I wanted to yell about for like the entire first 2 pages.
I remember going and testing wool inside a fabric shop, and all the old ladies were just looking at us like we were crazy.
So where were you thinking of reading us in?
So I wanted to start with replacing his hat.
Yes. Things actually happen.
Yes, I want to skip to the description. He's in the Silver Circuit, and he is describing it, and all the people. It's a very fancy, a mix of rich and poor people. You're getting a whole view of Randland society that has come together in this place that is now becoming a center of commerce, because all of the commerce that's flowing down from the river that's not getting picked up anywhere else. And then you have Matt.
Matt and poor Elysian.
Mm-hmm.
Replacing his hat, Matt raised his hand, and one of the bookers came. A hatchet-faced woman with a nose like an awl, spreading bony hands as she bowed, murmuring the ritual, "As my lord wishes to wager, so shall I truly write." The Abu Dari accent managed to be soft, despite clipping the ends off of some words. The book is open. Like the saying, the open book embroidered on the breast of her red vest came from a long time past, when the wagers were written into a book, but he suspected he was the only one here who knew that. He remembered many things he had never seen, from times long gone to dust. With a quick glance at the odds for the morning's 5th race, chalked on the slate the poleman held up behind the red-vested woman, he nodded. Wind was the only third favorite, despite his victories. He turned to his companion. "Put it all on Wind, Elysian." So that's just set up for the chapter that basically we've got Oliver riding on Wind, and Matt's putting all of his fortune on that.
He's very confident he can win it back, like no big deal, even if this goes badly. I love the interaction with Elysian though here, because it's like one of the really good conversations we get with Elysian, and then he dies like in not that many chapters. So it's like, oh, Elysian, so excited about, hanging out with his seamstress and all this, like, badgering Matt about his money management and like all that stuff. And it's like, oh, Elysian, you're going to live for like another week.
Enjoy your mistress while you can.
Yeah.
Make her laugh.
Have you all ever been to a horse race?
No.
I haven't, no.
So this whole scene, I hadn't read it in over a year. It reminded me of the Preakness, which is in Baltimore. That's the second one. The Kentucky Derby is the first one of the Triple Crown, which everybody's heard of, and then it's the Preakness, and then the Belmont. And the Preakness in you talk about that cut of society. So like in the stands, it's very expensive, very well-to-do people in the stands, and then the infield, like where the horses run around, it's like the cheap tickets, but it's like the party atmosphere. So like this just,
Right.
when I was picturing it, because they talked about the rope, and I guess it was the exact opposite, where I guess the richer got to get up front and the poor had to stay in the back, whereas the better seats at the Preakness are up high. But anyway, so just like I said, it reminded me of that, where you had the party seats in the middle, which are more the commoners, I guess you would say, and then the rich folk in the stands.
Yeah, anything to do with horses seems to be really a hobby of rich people. It's not a cheap hobby even to bet on, apparently.
I would. So I grew up in Hampton Roads. I think we talked about that a little bit, and we have Colonial Downs right down the road in Williamsburg. And to go to the races, I would agree with you 100%. But what they did a few years ago was created off-track betting centers. So they are just basically bars that have TVs everywhere of horse races, and then you can bet there at the bar. And the clientele that come into those are not well off. These are people that just like to gamble, and it's a very, very, very rough crowd. Been there a few times to go bet on the horses, and it's not a very rich person place to hang out at all.
Fair enough.
No, I mean, there's something to be said that like mostly poor people play the lottery, right? Like mostly poor, like gambling is a way to get away from your crushing life of debt and no money.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of more people do gamble and spend a lot of their hard-earned money on bets like this.
Oh yeah, I mean, you'd see people that I mean, you could just tell they're either homeless or next to homeless there betting their last pennies on the horses. And that is very common at those places.
And all it takes is an occasional win to keep that endorphins going and keep you coming back.
Yeah. Or one really, really horrible loss, which I had, which kept me from ever coming again.
I went gambling once and I had a terrible loss of like $125 and was like, I'm never doing that again.
I only lost $2, but it was the principle of it.
So I did want to ask about Elysian's hat, the square cap of blue velvet that did nothing to keep the sun off. It's not a fez, right?
No.
It's a square. It's like a.
It's got to be one of those weird hats that you find in the back of the costuming department when you're trying to put on a low-budget Shakespeare play. It's one of those hats.
Like four-pointed, kind of looks like a...
Yeah, and it's sort of floppy and crushed, and like some of the velvet's like completely worn away because it's been folded in that one corner for so long. Yeah, that's definitely what that hat is. I can see it on the Ashland stage like right now. Not that Ashland has low-budget plays, but like you know what I mean.
So Matt is really good at reading the horses, and we know that's just his upbringing. With his father, was all about the horses, and he cared about them quite a bit.
Yeah, both the care and keeping as well as the general like genetic confirmation and like, oh yeah, like that one was mishandled. That one just is never going to run well. Like he knows this stuff and it's all his. And somehow it didn't get eaten away by the dagger.
Right.
Yeah, the horse business is definitely very shady. but knowing your horses will definitely help with Matt's situation. Growing up in the Two Rivers, he knows horses.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think any of his luck comes into play with his horse racing?
Nah.
That he just happened to find a really lucky jockey to be on a very fast horse.
Olver and Wind might be Taviran things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think that it affects this race. I think it affects their career in total.
Fair.
And they said Oliver was the smallest, so that is a big thing in horse racing too. Is to so whenever you buy a horse racing program, because I've done this before, like they list the weights of the jockeys because that it actually does go into the calculations of you have a jockey that weighs 120 pounds and a jockey that weighs 130 pounds. He has to carry 10 pounds more weight. That goes into the actual the ratings on how this horse will perform. And
then you've got rampant anorexia among the jockeys as like a cultural thing, just like with models or dancers. Yes. And I saw Seabiscuit. Goodness. I know that this is a thing. I've also read about it like in other contexts, but
yeah. In a previous relationship, actually, my ex owned a thoroughbred. That was a racehorse, and she jumped. Did the jumping horses things, but learned a lot about horses relationship. Mostly just how to clean the stalls.
That is most of the point of having them is to get your like upper body workout from shoveling manure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Oliver being Kyrianan, he's the smallest of the small because the Kyrianan are already pretty small.
And he was poor and sickly and starving when he was found. So yeah, the whole like you might be 9, maybe is like he.
But he looks like he's 6.
Itty bitty. Mm-hmm. He's probably feeling out a little better now that he's living at an inn, but still.
Yeah, he's showing the red band at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's being treated well.
But he was very stunted at a critical like growth point, so.
It's going to take him a while to flesh out and grow up. And
yeah.
I noticed this, the woman he takes a bet with gives him a detailed blue fish, and I just can't help but thinking of Suan when I see that little blue fish. I mean, it's a blue fish. Like, that's just...
One thing.
And from Tyr, right? Well, no, Ebu Dar, but they're both fish communities.
Yeah, the fishing communities. The thing I noticed was that they've got insurance betting. They basically have a whole, like, circle or whole, like, economy of... wagering with ship owners and merchants as to whether a ship would sink or prices change. It's just such a darkly weird thing to bet on.
Bet on everything, yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. We know that that's a whole thing, like in the real world, betting on, if ships will sink or other lovely things to do with long overland or oversea trade. But it's just like they've even got insurance betting schemes here.
There's literally a betting market for everything. The entire world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called the stock market.
No. That's true.
I mean, that's really what this feels like to me, is definitely like the stock market for Ebu Dar. Bet on your futures, bet on your shipping futures, bet on your racing futures, like whatever it is. It's a giant guild, and they've gone far beyond petty race betting, and now, like, these profits are nothing to them because they're betting on, the economy.
I mean, lives and fortunes change hands beneath the ropes.
That's true.
Keith in chat is saying this is probably where the White Tower makes its money. I like it. White Aja adjusters.
But the river from Ebudar is not the one that goes through Tarvalon, correct? Because that one ends in Tyr. This is the Manetheren is what's going through Ilion. So actually, if you took this one from basically Emond's Field, you could follow Emond's Field all the way down to Ebudar by following the river. So yeah, the Wine Spring Inn actually drains into Ebudar.
Gotta love that watershed shape.
It's very,
yeah, it might be a little messed up by some channelers.
very Tarvalon-esque.
This is probably the closest reference we ever get to anything remotely close to prostitution, which canonically doesn't exist, even though that's bullshit. But she won't be friendly if I cannot afford to make her smile is... it's not prostitution, but...
It's not... Is prostitution not canonically? I mean, because you think about...
I believe that there's a quote from RJ somewhere that's like, no, prostitution doesn't exist. Sex work doesn't exist. And it's like, that's actual bullshit.
Well, because when they went to Ilion and they said Ease in the Batter is the perfume district, and I thought it was heavily implied as like the red light district.
Right.
Yeah, but there's an interview
I thought that was
where he's
heavily implied.
It is.
Okay.
It's much like he just happened to not include gay characters, but they're there.
Yeah.
The world is too well realized and creates those districts. We kind of have to just assume that what's going on there is what's going on there. You know, like human nature being what it is. Like,
yeah, and I don't know that that's what's going on here. It's just one of the closest references we get to people who, yes, will in fact do sex work because it's a booming economy.
I mean, I think we also have a lot going on with the innkeeper, the women in inns who sit on Matt's lap, and like there is something about bar, maids and wenches and getting an extra bit of a tip to go upstairs and sleep with them. I feel like we hear about some of that as well.
Yeah.
Where these women who are sleeping with Matt, I'm guessing he's leaving some of them generous tips.
Yeah, for sure.
Keith is saying in New Spring there's some sex trafficking. They try and kidnap Suwon in the Borderlands. Or is that Dark Friends?
Always blame on the Dark Friends.
I mean, Dark Friends would be involved in sex trafficking, so...
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, and like, I can't believe that, Hal Goad, I believe he's entirely involved in a prostitution ring and sex trafficking. The way he
Robert Jordan just lied to us in that interview, is what happened.
Yeah, well, and I don't believe the interviews. Robert Jordan lies. That's absolutely like Harriet. That's a quote from Harriet. Robert Jordan lied to us all the time, right? Like, don't believe anything he says.
And who was the interview with? Was it like Kids' Choice Awards magazine or something like that? And like, no, it's a kid's book.
Yeah, Robert Jordan was selling books. Like, you can deny all you want, but he put it in there. Like, that's why I just don't trust those interviews as much as I do the canonically what's in the book. Same reason I don't trust his notes, right? You can make notes and then decide not to use them. It doesn't make it have happened in the books. It just means it's an idea you were thinking about.
Then we've got some discussion about Olver and Olver's safety in the races, because there's no rules against the jockeys hitting each other with whips. Just like,
do you think Matt's a little overly concerned that like it doesn't happen that often?
Well, it's because he's worried that the women are gonna like come down on him for being a bad guardian to Olver, and apparently Satala Anan is the only reason that he's succeeded in keeping Olver out of the palace so far. And so if he comes back with one hair out of place, then Satala will march him right on over to the ostensible safety of the palace, which is just a bunch of weird finger wagging nonsense that is really boring to me.
I do love the image of Satala Anan standing up to like Brigida and Avienda, being like, listen, he is raising this boy, he's doing a good job, he took responsibility, like you have no right to take him away just because you don't agree with the way he's raising his son. Like I kind of, that image, that story that was told from these one or two sentences kind of like makes me giggle a little bit and go, oh, good job, Satala Anan. As abrasive as she can be as a character. Especially when she drags Nynaeve and Elaine to the kin.
Yeah.
Tendency to simply ride over everybody, which, obviously comes from her being an Aes Sedai, former Aes Sedai, is endearing sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. It's just the whole, like, you can't possibly raise a child well enough. We're gonna do it better. It's just like, oh my God, let it go.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of people like, oh, are you babysitting your child? No. I'm raising him.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. My dad likes to harp on the fact that when he was a single parent, he got praised all out of proportion to his, to my other, to various single moms out there who had kids the same age. And he's like, yeah, I'm raising my kids. That's what parents do. Why are you looking down on these women for not having a husband, but you looking up to me for not having a wife? Like, what even is this? It's nonsense. And you see, probably it's one of the dated things, right, that's showing up here is RJ's kind of like channeling a bit of that, inserting that into this. And it's just as gross here as it is in real life.
And we have free range kids. I have 2 kids myself, and we call them free range, because they can do their, and they're young. They're little kids. I have an 18-month-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. And we just let them out in the yard and kind of keep an eye on them, keep an ear open, let them go duff around and have.
It's just all you have to worry about is the bears. That's really like, as long as you keep the bears away, you're fine. I think
yeah. Well, are the bees? Yeah, my daughter last year decided to poke her finger into a yellow jacket nest, and that was not. That could have happened if we were standing right next to her. Like I was like, yeah.
Right. That's the thing about kids. They're suicide machines no matter where you are.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's a really good comic of like, I want to say it's like Saturday morning breakfast cereal. That's like we can't find the like super important radioactive chunk of something that got lost, and it's like, hold on, let me go get my kid. There it is, because the kid immediately homes in on it because it's the most dangerous thing in the room. So
that's just not with danger stuff. It's also with everything. I mean, I lost my keys one time, and they were gone for like a week, and I couldn't find them anywhere. And finally, I just asked my son, like, I was like, "Where are my keys?" And he like disappeared and came back like about 15 minutes later with the keys in his hand. I was like, all right. I still to this day have no idea where he put them or where I put them. I don't know if it was one of us, but he knew where they were.
Kids are kind of amazing like that, and that like they say the dumbest stuff sometimes, but at the same time they like have these crazy insights because they see what is instead of what they expect to be there.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like that's a little bit what Oliver's doing. He's like, I know it's a lot of his like observations or optimism in Matt winning, but I feel like he's also looking up to Matt and seeing somebody who is accomplishing something amazing, and like he believes in Matt in a way that nobody else really does. But it's a rational behavior as well.
Well, I mean, Matt sort of showed up and saved him from 2 nobles who were going to beat him up. It's hard not to hero worship someone who takes you away from being an urchin being abused to like having 150 uncles who think you're the coolest thing ever.
Also, give you a method for your revenge against those dirty Shido that killed your parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then, like, there's this fun hobby that just sort of, like, comes along, right? The only reason that they started taking Oliver to the races was because Elaine and Nynaeve refused to consider using Matt, and so he's bored, and the band is bored, and Oliver's bored, and pretty soon you're horse racing and gambling.
Mm-hmm. And Oliver, and that's how they met Oliver, was he had a fascination with horses.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
And when they first met him, he was trying to, I guess, pet someone's horse, and they were trying to beat him for it. And Matt's like, no. You're not gonna beat this kid.
Yeah. I'm half convinced that Oliver's like a horse brother,
Yeah.
Like, he's just so into horses. It's like, there's got to be something there, right?
That's canon now, by the way.
Horse brother. I suppose, we have a bear brother.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it solve so many problems if a parent could just talk to bears?
Yeah.
Love Julian. I've decided Julian would be just the greatest cosplay, because the Swordbreaker is highly recognizable, the Fez is highly recognizable, the bamboo staff, all those things, and you combine them, it doesn't take much to get a good Julian costume going.
Mm-hmm. 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 And then you just have to look really, like, dour all the time.
I'm already good at that.
But yeah, Julian shows up and already seems to have long-term future plans at this point. The whole thing about how he saves every copper that comes into his hands, and he's thinking about, like, life must be really hard for a woman in Terabon who doesn't know how to take care of herself. I'm like...
Amathera?
Exactly. I'm like, what? Like, she's not here yet. Like, what are you even saving for? You're saving against the fact that she's gonna show up and you're gonna decide to run away with her. But you don't know that's coming.
He's got a crush. What can I say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, Julian's the kind of guy who wants to settle down. He wants a long-term life. Like, he's He's a cop that's been around the block a couple of times, right? He's only 5 more days till retirement, you know? It's one of those.
Yeah, he does have that energy. And he saw Amathera for like an entire day, so that's obviously a reasonable basis for retirement plans.
Absolutely. Well, you know, Robert Jordan, you meet with someone for a day, you're automatically in love.
Yeah, but he is thinking about her. It's you know, for whatever reason, he is saving money and thinking about her.
Julian's honey, man. I can't wait for her to come around again.
I do really like the fact that she gets rescued by Julian, effectively, from like one of the worst, like, I mean, what a shitty life, right? It's kind of almost like Morghese and Talonvor, but without all the really weird shit.
Right.
Right? It's like you've been thrown down from your place of power and you are a servant and you think you're never going to have a life. And then this dude comes along and is like, well, I think you're cool. We could go raise chickens together. It's like, oh, I like that she gets rescued by Julian and they presumably have a reasonable life in the Fourth Age.
I think it's also a point that, like, not everybody is fit to be a ruler, right? Like, just because you inherit that position or it passes to you, it doesn't mean that should be your path in life, and it doesn't mean you can't find happiness doing something else.
Yeah, and like Julian actually manages to like bring her out of her shell a little bit after being like tortured and brainwashed into being Daco Vale. He actually manages to like coax a real personality back out of her, which is a testament to what a cool person he is, despite the fact that he's usually grumbling in the back of Matt's scenes.
Well, in fairness, you would be too if you were hanging around Matt.
Very true.
So, where are they heading? Because they've been using the Mask of Mirrors to sneak out, but this time they got dressed up and went somewhere?
This is going to the negotiation with the Sea Folk to talk about getting the channelers for the bull. They hired a boat and took off in nice clothes. That's definitely the scene we just saw with Avienda being overwhelmed by the ocean.
Water.
So, yeah, this is timing it up. So this is the same day that right now they are on the boat with the Sea Folk, probably.
Yes.
Doing the negotiations.
Yeah, that's what's happening this afternoon. It's a very active afternoon for the plot on the whole. Even though it takes several chapters to get through it all, this is a very important afternoon.
Again, time is compressed, man. Time is super compressed in these chapters.
Yeah, I think isn't how many days does the Crown of Swords actually take? Isn't it like one of the shortest, like as far as time goes? Like it's only a few days, if not 1 month.
Right. I thought it was like 10 days or something like that.
It might be that. Yeah, it's
That's quick.
Not a lot of time.
11 days is the canonical.
Yeah, this is one of the 11 days. Yeah.
And from one of their perspectives that they're shifting between.
Yeah. And then we have Matt being very frustrated at how they won't talk to him or tell him why they're here, which everyone is also annoyed about that. Matt, you're not alone.
There's a lot of internal dialogue here where he's like, I want Tom to figure out what's going on. And, you know, obviously Tom's like, yeah, I would like to know too. You don't think I'm trying? Yeah, and Julian so didn't quite call him a fool. They had been trying to find out exactly that for over a month, ever since coming here. So that just gives you the sense of the frustration. They've been there and some timing. They've been there for a month. The girls have been going to the Riyadh.
Or wherever they're going, yeah.
Wherever they're going, yeah. And he's been trying to find them this whole time, and it's failed every single time.
If they had asked him, they'd have been out here long since. But no.
So the next thing I have is Matt just sort of peering across the crowd, and he sees two very important people.
Yes.
A bent, white-haired old man with a hooked nose, who is... Noel. And a sharp-faced woman under a hat that's seen mostly plumes, which is Millie Skane.
And then two other people that matter not at all.
Matter not at all.
He gives you a description of 4 people, and you have no idea which ones matter.
Not until later.
Yeah.
Damn you, Jordan. Do you think that Noel is with her
No.
at this point?
Well, when we first see Noel, that was in the prologue, and he was with Grindel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the first time we see him.
Prologue of Blood of Chaos?
It might even be Fires of Heaven.
Might be Fires of Heaven. I think it's
Although
Fires
It is Fires of
doesn't
Heaven. Yeah.
It is Fires of Heaven. Yep. So, I mean, he's definitely, because he was somewhat compelled, right? At some point. So,
the idea he's been imprisoned and tortured after coming back from Shara.
Mm-hmm.
His fingers have been broken. His and he Ishmael bragged about getting him so turned around he didn't even know who he was anymore. So we know Ishamael was messing with him. And then we see him in Grendal's care, which we assume means there was some compulsion, and he's a bit brain fried.
So at this point, it's kind of hard to tell whether, if he's with them or not, because obviously it's it's Jacob Carradine and Dark Friends, and whether or not he's with that whole party that was brought under Grendal's compulsion, and maybe this is the part where he's finally getting out of it, or
that's kind of what I assumed, is that he was finally breaking the compulsion, and maybe these Dark Friends hadn't been using them, but he figured out that he's following her at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always headcanoned that he knows enough about what's happened to him to want to fight back. So he's somehow managed to find people who are bad and is trying to follow them, follow follow the weird woman who's hanging out with Jacob Carradine. Clearly there's something going on there. I think he's just trying to follow any thread of evil to something he can fuck with and fight for the light again. Because Carradine sees him but doesn't know him, and he clearly has been following. He knows where Millie Skane's going, right? I think he's a rogue agent at this point, and then fortuitously manages to find Matt and attach himself to Matt.
Mm-hmm.
But that's after the golem shows up.
Right.
That makes sense.
So at this point, he doesn't know Matt from anyone else.
No, not until he sees Matt following Millie Skane.
Well, he still doesn't know who Matt is.
No, he definitely doesn't.
But he's probably drawn to Matt being a Ta'veren and all.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
But he wasn't at the Dark Friend Social or anything. It's not like he knows Matt. He figures it out.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Noel was a minor Ta'veren. I mean, I know it's not canon, but just because of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. At some point that maybe his adventures, he was Ta'veren at some point earlier.
He could have been a Ta'veren at some point in his life and spit out, because I think they may mention that Ta'veren, you don't necessarily have to be Ta'veren your entire life. It's just that pattern chooses you for a while. And then
right.
After pattern's done,
you're out. There's some interesting contrast when you talk about Ta'veren versus Hero of the Horn, because not every Hero of the Horn is a Ta'veren.
Sure.
But there is so significant overlap. We know, at least with Arthur Hawkwing and Rand, and now we're speculating Noel, and of course Bella.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
of course. The next thing I have is Matt thinking about Avienda and Elaine and Brigida, and how did Rand made the mistake bringing those two together. I want to note this is maybe the first time that one of the boys is actually maybe he doesn't know everything about women. That was definitely a mistake.
Yeah, it's funny because it's yes, Matt, none of you know what you're talking about. You so much wisdom right here.
Although this is probably the best thing that could have happened to Rand, is the two of them coming together and working their differences out.
Oh yeah, for sure. Matt just assumes that it has to be, a cat fight rather than, mature adults deciding on something other than monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
What?
And I like that Jordan plays against the stereotype here, is the two of them don't go at it. They don't have to, fight to figure out which one of them gets Rand. They just share. And I think it's very startling for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, Avienda does offer to get herself killed at the beginning. She's like, you could, kill me or just beat me up. That would work. And Elaine's like, no, we're not doing that. But it wouldn't have been a fight so much as a toe meeting session.
Now I'm picturing two people having their toes just touching.
It's like thumb wrestling,
Yep.
but you use your toe.
1, 2, 3, 4. I declare toe war.
Yeah, go at it. Isn't that how they settle who gets the guy? Right.
Yeah, that's definitely how the Aiel do things. They play footsie to
Yeah.
resolve things.
That's what I thought.
Maiden's Kiss involves your feet in more ways than you think.
Whoa. Next, I would like to yell at Matt for saying he can judge women as well as horses, because that's just gross. Just unnecessary internal commentary from Matt. I mean, it's necessary from Jordan's perspective to make Matt who he is, but it's just do you have to be like this, Matt? Really?
Yeah, the whole women's objects thing that he keeps coming back to is not great. Or pets, animals.
Yeah, the objectification of women is no, you can't. Shut up.
It's not great. It's not great. And I think I've talked a lot about the evolution of Matt and how he sort of needs to see women as people in a way that he doesn't really. He sees them as as objects and things to be protected. And as much as his relationship with Tylan does set him up in a way with Tuon. Because it overturns his expectations with women. As much as it might be poorly executed, what it was trying to do is to take Matt, who's this character who sees women as objects, and say, hey, what if this person flips the script on you? What if they treat you like and objectifies you? What is that going to do to your psyche, and how is that then going to allow you to be a better person with your wife?
Yeah, because as much as Brigida gives him some revelations on the women are people too front, not with romance.
Right.
That is part of the shtick with Brigida, is that she would never look at him romantically, and that's an important thing for him to learn, but yeah, it wouldn't have set him well up for dealing with Tuon.
And that's really, I see this as Matt's evolution from a womanizer to a married man. Is really that women are people too, realization he has to come to. And one of the reasons I really hate the way Sanderson picked him up in book 12, because I really do feel like he reverted a lot of that evolution.
That rant would have fit well in this chapter.
Exactly.
Not
yes,
so much in Gathering Storm.
Yeah. not quite that much later. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's my take on Matt, and why I think Sanderson really missed the boat, because he wrote Matt like he is in this book, and missed the evolution away from the women are objects that Jordan so carefully wrote in there. Yeah.
He does respect their sense of danger awareness, though. This whole thing about, the fact that they're sneaking around says they know that there's danger. He's at least not infantilizing them. He's objectifying them, but he is giving them credit for awareness, to some extent. And it's yes, the fact that they're sneaky around it is because it's dangerous, for sure. He's right about that.
What do you think about this sentence? They were the sort who berated a man for meddling and chasing him away, then berated him again for not being there when he was needed. Not that they would admit he was needed, even then. Not them. Raise a hand to help, and you are interfering. Do nothing, and you are untrustworthy wastrel. Wastrel?
Wastrel.
Wastrel.
That's how it said in the audiobook. It's a wastrel.
That is a word I do not know. And until I read it out loud, I didn't realize that.
It's
look that one up.
Waste and rascal put together.
A waste of a rascal?
Here you go. I got it. I Googled it. A wasteful or good for nothing person. Are a neglected child. That's the archaic definition of it. The literary is a wasteful or good for nothing.
Interesting.
Kind of reminds me a waif to a wastrel.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I do think that his criticism there is really justified, because they have been you can't win with them the way that they approach him, and they blame him for being impossible to work with. And it's you're not exactly giving him options. The way that they've treated him this whole time is definitely he can't win. And Brigida really slaps him around about that. And that's where the apology is really rooted in. It's not just the Stone of Tear as an event, it's the Stone of Tear as a behavior pattern that makes her so angry at them.
Yeah, because she's not only have you shamed yourself in that moment, but your pattern of behavior has continued to shame you ever since. And that's what she's talking about.
Yeah, I love when Avi and Brigida team up to just be you what? And yeah, I mean, and in another sense, that's why he can be annoyed at women here, is because it's they are really trying his patience. So,
but the way they think of him, they don't think of him as a responsible leader, and so they don't give him the credit that he deserves.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of really bad peopling on everyone's parts.
And so then I feel the next thing we get is a couple of paragraphs of Matt. I feel I do this all the time, where I'm I know I've seen that. What's the name again? And you're sort of ruminating it in the back of your head, of trying to figure out where you saw that face or what that name is, and then it just hits you like a bolt. And I feel that's what he's doing with Millie Skane, is he keeps seeing her, but she's so out of context. Ebu Dar 2 years later, when he met her on a road in Andor,
when he was sick.
When he was sick in the stall, it's the context is just crazy out of place.
And yet she tried to kill him, so you'd think the face, and that's why the face pops through, is because he was deep in the dagger paranoia, right? That was the only reason he survived, was because he was deeply in the grip of the dagger, making him paranoid. So it takes him a minute, but also, yeah, you're gonna remember a face of someone who tried to kill you. One would hope.
I don't know. No one's ever really tried to kill me, so
fair.
I mean, I've had that happen before, though, where you run into someone that you met or that you had seen in passing, or and like some random event, and then years later you meet them and it finally hits, and it's a really weird moment. We're like, wait a second, on this day.
Yeah, especially like because people do change over a couple of years. They might look different.
Yeah.
And you're like it snaps into focus. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think about even like with my wife, we'd actually had met years before we actually met, if that makes sense. So I was in a previous relationship, and I worked for a company, and her boss was one of my clients, and I had dealt with her several times to get paperwork and all sorts of other things. And it wasn't until actually we had been dating for like I think almost a year, and it was like something came up, and I was like, "Wait, you used to work there?" And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Wait, when did you work there?" "Wait, I remember you."
That's wild.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So we always joke around saying, like, people ask, "Oh, how'd you meet?" Like, well, the first time, the real time.
Yeah.
Because
Right. Yeah.
different stories. Because we actually did meet before we met.
Yeah, I don't remember the first time I met my husband either, because yeah, we met as like just random people at a, family gathering where like he was a friend of the family and I'm in the family, and like I don't remember the first time we met, but he remembers being introduced to me. Like years later we actually started talking for real.
I feel like that happens a lot because I don't remember how I meet people, but then over time you form a relationship and you're like, oh yeah, this is now that we've met up multiple times and get to know each other.
Yeah, we just always been friends, right?
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Like back when Seth was in high school, like I'm sure like we...
Yeah, I could say it's entirely possible. We were in the same town. We were a year apart in graduating. Like it's entirely possible.
Who knows?
Probably my swim team, I'm sure, probably went to your school a couple of times, and
and I swam as well. So yeah, there's probably some connection there.
There's probably one time where we actually raced each other in an event, and like we could track that down and find me and be like, oh yeah, you beat
totally
me.
Did.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. We shook hands afterwards.
Totally, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Fast forward 25 years later, and here we are.
Here we are. Turns out we were both sitting in the corner reading Wheel of Time.
Well, I didn't quite find Wheel of Time yet at that point in my life. So.
Oh, yeah. I was definitely reading Wheel of Time in high school. That was me get out of practice and grab the book.
Yeah. I actually found it after college. So
you're late to the game.
Yeah. Well, it's a long story, but it was fun.
It's this whole like ruminating and noticing things he's thinking about. Even Brigida sometimes tickles his memory for like all the reasons. More grumbling about the other women. Yeah, this is a lot of Matt's internal thoughts and observation. And Elysian is anxious about how the race is going.
Well, Matt's just staring.
Yeah, it's all in the background.
Yeah.
Elysian's just like pacing and chewing his nails and like all this like caring, and Matt's just like, where do I know her from?
And Matt does, yeah. Something about straw. The staple.
Yeah. A knife? Fire? What?
What?
Which is funny. It's kind of like the organic version of what happens to Bors or to Carden in the next chapter, where he gets the like magic induced recollection stream. This is kind of like when your brain does it normally is what Matt's doing.
Gotcha. Yeah, because he's got that like totally compulsion on him that he remembers
from the Dark Friend social.
From the Dark Friend, yeah.
Yeah. So this is like, it's not foreshadowing really, but it's kind of like a lot of memories are coming back to characters in this passage of this section of the book.
And we get a full recounting of one of those memories here. So yeah, I just wanted to, I kind of want to read that whole thing, the flashback.
Oh, from Eye of the World?
Yeah, from Eye of the World. Is it exactly the same as it is in Eye of the World? Or because I thought in Eye of the World it's from Rand's perspective, because Matt is unconscious. So here it's actually doing the same.
No. It's from Matt's perspective because Rand's sick at this point. This is when Rand is deathly sick and Matt's taking care of him.
No, it's before we start getting POVs that aren't Rand.
Oh yeah, it's not. Yeah, because Matt doesn't have POVs yet. So
yeah, this is slightly different from the Eye of the World telling because it's from Matt's POV.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, because Matt doesn't have his first POV till is it the Great Hunt? No, it's not till Dragon Reborn, right?
Yeah, I think our first POV is when he wakes up after being healed in the tower.
Yeah, I think you are correct. That's a good point. I just figured since Rand was so sick, but yeah, it's still his sick.
Well, he's laying there and letting Matt do everything. He's just observing.
Yeah. Matt's definitely Dagger Matt at this point, but he's not full Dagger Matt because he only had the dagger for like a week at this point.
Right.
And Rand is sick from channeling sickness because of what just happened at Four Kings.
Yeah.
and they're on their way to Camelin. They try to remember the name of the town. Is before or after Market
I think
Sharon?
it's after Market Sharon because they're
After
starting
Market
to
Sharon.
not perform anymore because they're afraid of drawing attention.
Right, because they already met Pater, who tried to.
Yeah.
He got punched in the nose. And then,
Stupid Pater. But yeah, but he is deeply in the dagger because it says in here that like he would have died if the dagger hadn't been making him so paranoid. So it's like when the dagger's waxing and waning, like it was on a strong wax during that scene, which like is weirdly Taviran to save them for all that it's, you know, evil. It's like, well, sometimes a little dash of evil is a good survival mechanism.
the one thing that did confuse me was, if I remember correctly, when she was described in Eye of the World, she was described as a beautiful woman, like, because it really caught them off guard. And then here, she's not necessarily described the same way. I mean, she said she's easy on the eyes. I mean, but she's not described in the same. And maybe because they're more worldly at this point, but definitely the descriptions, if I remember correctly, are different.
I think that the word vulpine does get used in Eye of the World, I think.
A woman stood there holding it open with one hand. For a moment, she was only a dark shape in a dress, outlined by a faint light of early morning. Then she stepped inside, letting the door shut behind her. She was about the same age as Nynaeve, but she was no village woman. A pale green silk of her dress shimmered as she moved. Her cloak was a rich, soft gray, and frothy net of lace caught up her hair. She fingered a heavy gold necklace as she looked thoughtfully at Matt and him.
So it's
So no description of her body or anything like that.
the grandness of ladies' clothing. But
Yeah. Okay.
I can't look at my horse. Are you ill? He's all right, Matt said stiffly. He just got a chill in the rain, that's all. Perhaps I should look at him, she said. I have some knowledge. Rand wondered if she were Aes Sedai. Even more than her clothes, her self-assured manner, the way she held her head as if on the point of command, did not belong here. You were sick, though. Yes, and still weak as a day-old kitten, I think. She reached under her cloak, and suddenly things were happening too fast for Rand to do more than give a strangled shout. Her hand flashed from under her coat. Something glittered as she lunged across Rand towards Matt. Matt toppled sideways in a flurry of motion, and there was a solid chunk of metal driven into the wood. It all took an instant, and then everything was still.
it's very different from what happens in this book. I mean,
It's very, very different than what happens in this book.
it's the same, but it's totally different POV.
So from here, in Matt's POV, that was Rand's, this is Matt's. Weak as a day-old kitten, she was saying as she reached beneath her cloak. I think a knife appeared in her hand so suddenly, streaked for Matt's throat, that he would have been dead if he had not been ready. Dropping flat, he seized her wrist and just pushed it away from him, the curved Shadow Logoth dagger sweeping out to lie against her slim, white neck. The woman froze, trying to look down at the sharp edge dimpling her skin. He wanted to slice, especially when he saw where her own dagger had stabbed into the stable wall. Around the slim blade, a black circle of char grew, and a thin gray tendril of smoke rose from the wood, about to burst into flame.
We never see any knives like that ever again.
But yeah, just those two, one scene from two different perspectives. Again, this is the second time we've had like a sort of a retelling of a scene from a different perspective in this book. We're getting a lot of like flashback and reminders, I think, is what Jordan's doing. You're like, remember this happened.
Also remember that all your narrators are unreliable.
Absolutely unreliable.
100%.
That scene is observed by Rand, who's suffering from channeling sickness, and Matt, who's suffering from Shadow Logoth sickness at the time, and both of them give them unreliable memories. So it's actually kind of remarkable the story's as close as they are.
Well, you know, near-death experiences focus the mind wonderfully.
That stable had not been the last time Dark Friends had tried to put an end to Matt Cawthon.
Yeah, and I don't honestly think that she's there looking for him.
No.
Like, he thinks that, like, there's got to be a conspiracy because Taviran and Dark Friends, and it's like, nah, she's actually looking for what your friends are looking for. Like, that's the whole thing that she's doing, is she's trying to find a way to this cache of Terangrial, and by sheer coincidence is there the same day as Matt, which might be Taviran, but, well, it has to be Taviran because the ring shows up as a result.
I think she might also be gambling away some of the money Moghedien gave her to try and have more bribes to try and find the stuff.
Oh, she's definitely gambling for the shits and giggles, for sure. This is just, like, a selfish Dark Friend taking 5 for herself. I mean, Karadin yells at her about it in the next chapter.
I think she's embezzling the money from funds for finding the cash.
Absolutely. Because she's a selfish Dark Friend. I mean, why not? She is looking on Karadin's behalf, and Karadin is working for Samael.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not Moghedien, but it's all the same cash. Yeah, Megiddian I don't think ever works with non-channeler dark friends. I think she only ever drives channeler dark friends.
Now you're making me rack my brain.
Well, I just read the next chapter when I did minutes for this chapter, so I know it's Samael that's driving Carradine, and Carradine yells at Millie Skane to put all of her resources into finding this cache. After she's like, it's hard, and he's like, I don't give a fuck, do it more.
Don't they end up coming under the protection of a different Forsaken though, who takes over?
I mean, well, Samuel dies at the end of this, right? So,
Oh yeah, so someone could pick up that network for sure. Oh yeah, Moradin, because Moradin shows up at when they leave. Right, he's the Watcher. So yeah, he grabs these networks, but Samael has to be dead before that happens.
But this is the introduction of Moradin as the Watcher and the Wanderer.
And yeah, then Millie Skane gets to kill Carradine later, but for now, she's obeying him.
Right, drowns him in brandy.
Yeah, I saw a woman who tried to kill me. Give her a trinket next time. Thanks, Elysian.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, Matt notices that her appearance doesn't quite match her behavior. The fact that she's dressed really nice but doesn't have a maid or a conveyance is like your first hint that she's off.
Are being carried by a chair.
Yeah.
Right. Millie Skane's the kind of, because she's not actually a noble, right? She took over Lady Xian's role, right? She killed her and pretended to be her. So this is someone who is pretending to be a noble and therefore doesn't necessarily have the resources of the money of a noble, even though she's pretending to be one. Yeah,
and she's comfortable doing things like walking. You know, it wouldn't occur to her that that's not a reasonable way to get around, right? Like, but yeah, she's just a poor Andoran who, her story comes up in the next chapter, and it's pretty cool. But yeah, no, she does not know how to be a noble beyond what she tortured out of the actual Lady Cheyenne.
No, but she is dressed pretty nice in Eye of the World. It's not like she's got nice. She is a lady.
Well, she adopted that identity years before the books start, I assume. So it's not that she has no idea how to be a lady, but yeah, she's comfortable only doing the superficial costume. Also, because she wants money for gambling and jewelry.
There's a line here where I was talking about the economic benefit of Ebu Dar. So what Saldeia had once said into Ered Doman now came downriver to Ebu Dar, because Domani is just in chaos after the king's death. And so did what Amadisia had traded to Terabon. So we've got two major trading kingdoms now trading with Ebu Dar who didn't used to. So a lot of riches coming to the city. And
that's all because of the Shanshan, really. Like, these are cascading ripples out of like what's coming to Ebu Dar. You know, this is the economic bow shock, so to speak, of the invasion and the destabilization that led to, you know.
Isn't Ered Doman in chaos because the king was kidnapped by Forsaken?
That's way later, but at this point, I don't know if they already has been kidnapped yet, or.
I have such a hard time with Ered Doman versus Terabon and which rulers and which fuckeries happen.
Because that plot line's in Sanderson books, right?
Right. Thank you, Super Skylake in chat. King of Ered Doman was kidnapped at the same time as the King of Ilion. King of Ilion was Matin Stepaneos was captured by Elida, but yeah, Al-Salam was captured by Grandal, and then gets restored to Rodel Ituralda by Zenrand at the end. He wasn't actually brainwashed or broken or anything. He was literally just stashed aside and then gets recovered sort of mysteriously, but isn't actually broken. But yeah, that's part of why Ered Doman is messed up, is because the king's been gone and Grandal has been sending out orders in his name. And that's part of why, like, Ituralda is, when we see him, he's at the end of a very long and confusing campaign, and he's deciding to go rogue. Because this whole time, Ered Doman has been falling apart under Grandal's direction. I believe Grandal's ensconced at Natron's Barrow at this point.
Yes, definitely. As Lady Bassane?
Yeah.
Bassine? Yeah, so she's been definitely controlling. And that's why Ered Doman's in chaos, and that's why all the wealth is flowing down the river to Ebu Dar.
And Terabon's in chaos because of the Shanshan and the supergirls and the Black Aja. But yeah, no, you're right. Grandal is nothing to do with the Shanshan. It's a nice description of Ebu Dar being white and smelling desperate. Because Matt's following her through the crowd, so we have to have your quintessential crowded market scenes that every medieval story needs.
So she stops at the goldsmith. I couldn't figure any reason for her to stop other than just wanting jewelry. being greedy and being like,
shiny.
Yeah,
Shiny thing?
shiny. Yeah, no,
Shiny,
for
yeah.
sure, for sure. She probably like wanted to buy it with her winnings, right, and then didn't win, and so it was like, well.
she's looking at it and then gets all pissed off. And so Matt then also has to stop. And this is where we get one of my favorite he pointed randomly lines where we get the ring. Yes, we get the signet ring with the fox and the ravens, which is a key.
The fox that makes the ravens fly and snatches the moons from out of the sky. This ring is what makes Tuon go, oh, this is my husband that was foretold. Interesting.
And considering so much of the dice dropping is him getting into the palace and foreshadowing him interacting with Tuon, there's so much of his luck is pointing him to Tuon and being like, you need to be married to this woman. And whatever you do that puts you on that path is significant in your life.
Yeah, it's funny he doesn't get a set of dice falling with this event, given
That's a
how
good point, yeah.
fortuitous it is. But yeah, points at random and then pays for it with a random amount of money. Like, it's just total chaos.
Just takes a handful of coins out and just throws it down. Like, here.
Yeah, it goes pointer, middle, ring, pinky.
So he did put it on his middle finger.
Yeah, because it's a long ring, right? It's a really long oval, so he puts it on presumably the longest joint of his hand.
Gotcha. I was trying to make it a marriage ring on his marriage finger, but nope, forcing that analogy too far.
It's just a flip-off ring.
Daryl is the bodyguard, and I'm curious, if Jordan said if he's got a name, he's got a backstory, I would love to hear Daryl's backstory as the guard of the ring merchant.
It's a little slow.
A little slow, kind of gets yelled at a lot. Daryl, get the grease! All right.
I don't know what the grease is,
You know,
boss.
yeah, exactly. God damn it, I hired you for your muscles, not for your brain. Anybody want a peanut? You know?
And it's funny because he throws like a handful of coins down for what is effectively a non-saleable piece. Like, this isn't even meant as the item, right? The goldsmith is like, here's a demonstration piece, and I can get you like a real ring. And Matt's like, no, I'm gonna buy your demo piece. It's like, okay. Like,
I imagine it's so overly complicated with the fox and the ravens and the 9 moons because he was showing off the detail he could do and like really getting deep in there and being like, here's all the things I could put on a ring. And you don't want all of those on a ring necessarily. It's just because it's a showpiece and not an actual ring. It's a lot more detailed.
I wonder how many years he had it sitting in his booth before this scene happened.
What inspired him to make it? What
Exactly.
twisting inspired? What fox chasing ravens with 9 moons inspired him?
Yeah, why 9 moons? Like, because Sean Shannon, there's no way that this was commissioned by some, like, you know, fanboy of the blood. Like, that's not a thing. This is literally just randomly existing.
But the moon is the story. It's the fox, which is Matt, that makes the ravens, which is the Sean Chan fly, and daughter of the 9 moons. Yeah.
It's like the 90s S. You know what I'm talking about? And then
Totally.
So it's the weird, and no one knows the origin of it. Like, people thought it was like the company Stussy, that was a surfing company but they came out and said, nope, that's not our S. And like, no one knows exactly where it came from. But all over around the world, around the 90s, kids started drawing this S.
I do it all the time.
And it's not a Superman S. It's not a logo of anything that's known of. And it's called the 90s S. And it's this weird phenomenon. So this ring might be like that, where it's just like, hey, ravens, foxes. Like, it's just the thing that I came in my head one day and I started drawing it. Everyone started drawing it.
And that S you're talking about, it's the one where you draw 3 vertical lines, then under it 3 more vertical lines, then connect them with diagonals. Yeah.
You can look it up. It's a really fascinating thing of like theories about the 90s S, like where it came. Nobody knows, but everyone drew it in the 90s.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Back in the 80s.
I recognize this symbol from all over the place, but I'd never thought to wonder at its origin.
Yeah, you can Google it and no one knows. It's one of the great mysteries in life.
It's like another one of those like mandala effect kind of things. Like, it just popped in from somewhere.
Berenstain Bears.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Weird. Yeah, so yeah, we're gonna headcanon that's what was going on here with this design. I don't know, I just thought 9 rings or 9 moons seemed cool.
And then, so once Millie Skane moves on, he loses her for a little while, and I love the scene of him jumping up on the statue and like basically grabbing the bare-breasted woman around the waist, and people being like, "Real women are warmer."
It's funny.
It's funny because people get up there, and like I guarantee the woman's breasts are like shiny from all the touching that happens.
Right. It's a weird statue design, but Yeah. The concept of a few random people just heckling Matt while he's like trying to chase down this assassin, it's just like such great physical comedy.
Well, it's a little bit of like justice is blind,
Honesty is naked.
honesty is naked. That's sort of the similar,
Mm-hmm.
in the same way that like, is it justice that just has the one best breast bared, or is that a different statue that I'm thinking of?
I kind of thought that the whole bare-breasted statue thing was only in Wheel of Time.
I mean, Virginia flag has the bare-breasted woman standing over a king and says "Death to tyrants."
Well, that's probably something like victory then,
tires.
rather than justice. Death to tyrants. Okay, ancient Roman cosplayers. Thus ever for tyrants.
Yeah, the Virginia flag totally has a single bare-breasted woman on it.
Mm-hmm. It's the only flag that has nudity in it, and yeah, and underneath is six separate tyrants, which is death to tyrants.
I didn't drop that. That's probably partially what I'm thinking about, because Virginia.
Yeah, good old Virginia. Yeah,
That's really fucking weird.
Isn't it?
Six Semper Tyrannus, and it's so
Death to tyrants.
Death to Tyrants, and it kind of looks like an Aiel Maiden of the Spear on top of a soldier.
It kind of really does, yeah. Except the Aiel would never wear blue.
And there's no veil or anything like that, but there's a spear.
There is a spear.
That's Virginia's flag, yeah.
And there is a person with a crown not on their head anymore, so also very Aiel.
Yep.
That's Layman down there on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
See his sword?
Layman laying on the ground.
Yeah, totally. She's picked up his sword, and that's what she's carrying.
Again, how you know it's not an Aiel, because an Aiel would never pick up a sword.
Would never pick up the sword, yeah.
Also, I posted the cool S just so people can know what we're talking about.
I might just make that the cover art for this episode, just to mess with people. Be like, what does this mean? It means nothing.
Just put the Virginia flag up there.
So after he sees her, finally follows her to her destination, which is Jacob Carradine's palace. And he sees her going up the steps and going inside and being welcomed in like an old friend, basically.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I chase her down, but I'm going to chase her down anyway. It's like, okay, excellent plan.
But he doesn't do anything. And this never really comes back, does it?
No, he just wants to know where she's going because reasons.
I guess he does tell the girls that Jacob Carradine is a dark friend. That is important information.
He gets that information that Jacob Carradine is hanging out with a known dark friend. And that's good information, but also like they were going to think anything good of Carradine in the first place. Like,
I think it would be surprising, though, that the White Cloak is... I mean, we know this as the reader, but from Matt's perspective, this is probably shocking. Like, because everything you've learned about the Children of Light your entire life, and a dark friend's in league with the White Cloaks, this makes zero sense. I mean,
the White Cloaks are literally the anti-Dark Friend force. So,
right,
yeah, you're like, oh man, they've got a spy.
This scene sort of reminds me of when he loses Tuon in that one town, and he has to spin around randomly to find her. This is kind of the same thing where it's just like it's this bustling, chaotic situation, and then as soon as he gives up trying to be logical about it, he finds her. I mean, as Matt does, but definitely think of this scene when he loses Tuon in that town later on, because it's just like, Matt, just learn, just forget looking. You know how this works.
But at the same time this is going on, we know later Jacob Carradine is having his moment where and the Forsaken is literally visiting. The Forsaken is gatewaying in right now because Jacob Carradine has that moment where the power trigger goes off in his head.
Yeah, so Matt watches her go in and stands around contemplating that while she gets brought in and taken up to Carradine and they begin their interview. He takes off his hat and talks to who we discover is Noel. And because he has his hat off, then his face is visible as Carradine is standing at the window while he's talking with Millie, and then sees her, and all of those events go down. So if Matt hadn't stood around scratching his head and being like, what is going on here, then that moment wouldn't have happened. He had to linger there for a few minutes because Millie Skane obviously isn't going to be she's to get brought in, and taken up and made to wait and all of that crap.
Right. Turning his hat in his hands, he frowned uneasily at the palace. Okay, so yeah. Right, so he's taking it off to fan himself because it's so hot. And he's just standing there being like, who in the Doom lives there,
Yeah, he muttered, finally. That lets you know that there was time for her to get brought up to Carradine and have that conversation. And if he hadn't said that out loud, then...
No, Noel.
Yeah.
Well, I bet Noel, this is my opinion, I think Noel was following Matt, following Cheyenne.
I always thought he was following Millie herself.
You think he's following Millie's game?
I think that he's following people who Carradine interacts with. And then when Matt shows an interest, he shifts focus. And I think he starts following Matt after this. Not positive about that. But I do think that he's following Millie on her own at this point. And the fact that Matt follows her is what triggers his interest.
Gotcha. I'm nodding to that, yeah. Because he wouldn't have known... Well, we don't think he would have known Matt from anybody else. Although it is entirely possible that when he was in Grendal's care that Matt was identified.
It's true. It's true.
But he might be brain fried enough to like not really get that, you know? Maybe he's got some like recognition without really knowing why he's got recognition of Matt.
But him hunting around Carradine in an effort to find some sort of plot to foil would be a good... Like, I don't know why he went to Abu Dar, but, you know, the head of the White Cloaks, if you're Jane Farstrider, you probably know the head of any faction of the White Cloaks is not great news. Just a base assumption. These guys are not good. And Noel does, you know, vanish before Matt can get a good look at him, which does suggest that he quickly picks up on Matt being important in some capacity. Like, let me just not impress myself on your memory real quick.
Noel pulled a Batman. That's how it feels when it happens, you know? Like, he turned around and he was just gone. So, headcanon, Noel is Batman. That's basically a really old, beaten down, broken up Batman who did some traveling.
Who's poor.
So are you saying that Batman is Jane Farstrider spun out in our
Absolutely
age?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And that makes him a hero. A hero of the Horn is just, you know, Batman. Totally. And it's slightly different.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. 100%.
And I mean, I think on that's pretty much the end of the chapter. Is we have Noel disappearing and Matt standing there looking puzzled about what the hell is going on. Why is a dark friend going into Jacob Carradine's palace? What could that possibly mean?
Oh, and a set of dice start up.
And a set of dice start tumbling.
I wonder what that set is. Which one is that? Because there's like multiple sets at this point.
Has anybody mapped out all the dice for Matt? I'm sure someone has.
I don't know, but if someone hasn't, then I'm disappointed in our collective nerdliness.
I feel like they're just random enough. It's hard to really know exactly when they all are.
Yeah, and they do overlap.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's the other thing. Is like there's multiple going at the same time.
It just has this line here. He recognizes Noel from like 10 minutes prior, and it hit him like an illuminator's night flower exploding in his head. That's literally happening to Carradine in that exact same moment. Like, Jordan uses just this little turn of phrase here for Matt to be like, oh yeah, I saw you 10 minutes ago. While literally like 2 stories up, Carradine is having this like magical migraine of repressed memories come flooding back. Like literally at the same moment.
Huh, that's really cool. I love the parallels there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, it's clever, Jordan. I like it.
Very clever.
Oh, that's why the dice start, is because suddenly Carradine is triggering this magical thing and bringing Samael into the picture and changing the trajectory of everything by standing there, being observed by Carradine. He changes the arc of lots of the plots in Abu Dar. So that's why the dice start.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's a huge change in things. When, like, all of a sudden he's being hunted and they know he's in the town and maybe there is actually a cache that he was, like, almost ready to give up, but maybe if Matt's in town, maybe there is something to that. Like, yeah, a lot's going on
Yeah,
there.
so usually we see the dice ending when something gets concluded. This is one of the few times that we see changes making the dice start. That's kind of fun.
Okay, Encyclopedia Watt has a list of
Woo!
dice. So, Matt feels the dice after he follows Cheyenne to the palace and learns that Carradine is staying there. The last time he felt the dice rolling his head so hard was just before he found himself with the band on a ridge, you know, basically when he got the band. The dice do not stop when he meets Teslin and Jolene. They do not stop when he meets Tylin. They don't stop when he returns to the Wandering Woman. They don't stop when he's attacked.
They stop when he accepts going to the palace, right?
They finally stop, yep. They thunder when he returns to the Wandering Woman. They don't stop when he meets Brigida. And they finally stop when he agrees to move into the Terrasen Palace.
And that's this set.
Yep.
Huh.
The dice start again on the 3rd morning in the palace.
He only gets 3 days without it.
Poor dude.
poor guy.
Maybe that's why he's so cranky.
And then they stop again when the wall collapses on him.
So these dice all have to do with how he's influencing events in Abu Dar.
And how much, and leading him to Tuon.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, if he hadn't gone to the palace, he might not have met Tuon, obviously, but he might also have been an easier target to be assassinated or something by, like, Millie Skane's lackeys, you know?
And since we're talking about the dice, they start up again when he thinks about leaving with Val and Luca in Winter's Heart, and then they stop when he meets Tuon. They start when he leaves Abu Dar and stop when Beslin and the Windfinders begin their attack. They start when he decides to talk to Tuon and stop when he agrees to the agreement that she won't escape. There's a bunch more Tuon starting up and stopping.
I'm glad someone's mapped all this out.
Yeah, it's pretty. And then there's some
bookmark that page. We'll need it.
Yeah, totally. It's literally just Matt's Encyclopedia Watt page. Just go down to the bottom, and it has a list.
Nice.
It is pretty long, and it is significant events, but it doesn't seem to have one particular pattern to it, as far as I can tell. Just significant events in his head, or with Tuon, or with Abu Dar, or with just changing events in his life.
Well, this is a moment that changes a lot in his life without him knowing it. Nothing like bringing Samael's attention straight to you to change the direction of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'd say there's one thing, it's really Tuon is one of the main central themes of the dice. Either leading him to her, or marrying her, or when she agrees to marry him.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is him concluding a thing that was set up in the beginning of book 2. So it'd be weird if the dice didn't show up, even if it isn't directly related to Tuon.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, Alan, I want to say, unless we have anything else about this chapter?
Yeah.
Yep, I want to say...
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, it was good talking with you.
It was a real pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with the wheel reads, and keep on making that, and
sure.
Yeah, no, you're 3 books in, and we got on your 4th, and that's really exciting.
And no intention right now of ever stopping, at least for the next 6 years. So,
I know the feeling.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how long we've mapped it out, and that's how long it'll take at our current pace. So we'll get there.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll continue to see you around the podcast ecosystem.
Yeah. I'm around, and yeah, I mean, we have. I guess the other thing coming up I didn't mention in the beginning, Twitter of Time Awards we're hosting in June, so that's gonna be fun. So that's another fandom thing that we're doing. So it's like an Oscars type thing. I'm working with The Way of the Leaf podcast, YouTube, Malkier Talks, Lauren from Unraveling the Pattern, a bunch of people. We're all coming together to make something happen on YouTube. It's gonna be fun. That's all it is. It's just fun.
Pretty much everything involving Wheel of Time is fun.
And where do people find that? Just Twitter of Time?
Oh, where do you find about that? Yeah, you can find it on my post on Twitter, at the Wheel Reads on Twitter. We can be found at wheelreads.com. Is our website. Has links to pretty much everything. If you just type in Wheel Reads anywhere, we're yeah. So I've capitalized the name and have it everywhere. So it's I can't think of any platform. I guess we're not on Snapchat, we're not on TikTok.
Fair.
Other than that, I think we're everywhere else.
Well, TikTok, the platform of podcasts, everywhere. So,
yeah. Exactly.
Long-term audio content. That's what TikTok's all about.
Yes, very much.
Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Turn recording off.
I remember going and testing wool inside a fabric shop, and all the old ladies were just looking at us like we were crazy because we're just in there going around like pulling the wool and trying to make them snap. So, little side tangent story. I race sailboats for fun, and we used to be able to do this. We can't do it anymore because of environmental rules, because you're not allowed to put anything in the water that's not natural. And I guess wool's not considered natural, even though it is. But anyway, so I digress. So when you put up the big front sail that pops, that you see, the colorful sail and all those pictures of sailboats all the time, it's called the Spinnaker. For racing sailboats, what we used to do is we would tie wool around it so it all comes together nice and tight. And when it goes up really fast because it doesn't fill with wind until we pull the line, and it pops all the wool strings, and then it pops open and fills with the wind, so that we can raise the sail faster and more efficiently. So we're at a fabric store in Annapolis, Maryland, and literally the old ladies are like looking at us as we're going to each wool spool and pulling it out and seeing like how easily they snap, like to make sure it's like the perfect breaking strength, because you don't want it to break too easily because it'll break too early,
Right.
but you don't want to be too tough because it won't break. So like
Right.
they were literally going around testing all the wool and just like breaking off little pieces of like the wool, and these ladies that were at the fabric store just keep on looking at us like, what are you doing? Like,
Systematically destroying our inventory. What is happening?
important what we're doing right now. All right, we'll pay for any of the damages. Just
That's funny.
We need 1 inch of every wool you have. That's awesome. Yeah, no, so I don't know what the possibilities of wool are at all. Well, you can get something thin like that.
well, I only lost $2, but it was the principle of it. So I'll tell a quick story again, and then I'll let you get back to action a little time. Yeah. So I went to the off-track betting center for the Colonial Downs, and they have races from all over the country. And there's a track in Dover, Delaware called Dover Downs. And I bought the program for Dover Downs. I've been betting on Dover Downs all night long. And it was race number 4. And I bought a $2 trifecta, which means you pick the number 1, number 2, number 3 horse, pick them in order to come in. And it pays a whole lot out. It's like winning the lottery if you hit it. So I bought a $2 trifecta. The horses I picked were paying, I think it was 1,000 to 1. So for a $2 bet, I would have got $2,000, which college me was a lot of money to put $2 and make $2,000.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I go to the teller window. I place my bet on, let's say horse 5, 7, and 8, and look up the screen. Race goes off. Dover Downs, 5, 7, 8, right in a row. I just turned $2 at the $2,000. I am hearts thumping. I am super excited. I run up to the teller window. I hand her a ticket, big smile on my face, give my money. And she runs the ticket. She goes, this is not a winner. And I was like, what do you mean it's not a winner? And she's like, it's not a winner. So I go back and look at the TV screen. I was like, no, these are the horses. She's like, well, maybe it hasn't officially posted yet, because they have to go and review. Wait a couple of minutes till you see it come back on the screen, say officially posted, come back. So I did, came back, still not a winner. So then I start getting angry. I'm like, no, I placed this bet. I need my money because I lost $2, but I want the money. And she goes down, she goes, so what'd you say you bet on? I said, I bet on Dover Downs, race 4, these horses. I won. There's the screen. And she's like, your ticket says Delta Downs. I was like, so there's another track called Delta Downs, not Dover Downs. So I went to place my track. The teller misheard me placing my bet. And then rather than entering it in for Dover Downs, she entered the race in for Delta Downs. And that didn't win. So
That's terrible.
So I was, there's no recourse. You can't say like, well, I meant to buy Dover Downs. Well, the race is over. You can't, you get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
And Ebu Dar heads would have rolled.
Yeah. So, so in that was the last time I ever bet on horses, and I never came back. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, no, they needed a guild with violent accountability to reassure you that wouldn't have happened again.
Absolutely. Right.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?